Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Parenting is Easy, Said No One Ever. I'm your host, Chananya Abraham, and I am so honored and I am so happy to be able to share this awesome interview and conversation more that I had today with Lisa, who is a survivor and has been dealing with scoliosis since she's been a young teenager. And she had such a great outlook and so insightful and helpful for parents and for teenagers regarding how to deal with adversity, how to deal with sickness, how to deal with the emotional and the mental part of having a visual sickness that can really affect you socially and emotionally and mentally. And I think there's so many great little tidbits that she talks about regarding adversity, creating balance, finding a healthy outlet that we can have and how to deal with it, how to deal with children that may be going through it. And then also if a parent that's going through their own pain and their own things, and when they started dealing with it, how they can deal about the concept of being a fallible, healthy parent has to do with also realizing that parents are not perfect. And I think that's one of the main messages and one of the main things we talk about, amongst other small little tidbits that I think are going to be so helpful and so beneficial to anyone that listens to this. As always, please like and subscribe anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can reach out to us on social media at Parenting is Easy, no one ever, but instead of ONE, just put in the number one. And you can email us as well as parentingeasypodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much and enjoy this awesome episode. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. And this is something I've really been looking forward to for a while. And this is a topic that we haven't talked about before. And maybe just give parents a little bit of like a background here of where you're coming from and how we sort of got connected to have this amazing conversation today.
Yeah, you reached out to me, which was awesome. And through the wonders of social media, I have a platform, my Instagram page, to promote my book, The Silverhorn Girl. And I hope that some of what I was talking about in the book and my post resonated with you, especially since you deal with children and teens and tweens. But yeah, basically, my book is for anyone that feels different, any child that feels different. I think we all have something, especially as children, there's something that we always feel like we're the only ones. And so I base the story of my book off of my experience with scoliosis and going through all of that and how that made me feel so different, made me feel like wearing a bright metal silver horn on my head, just because I felt like I stood out so much.
So could you talk a little bit about like the scoliosis aspect, like what for parents that are maybe unsure or maybe can use a little more education, what is that and how is that something that can affect someone?
Okay. And just a little preemptive, I am not an expert in this field. I can only go by, my experience and my journey.
Right.
But thankfully, there's so many wonderful support groups and through social media, being able to connect with people and learn more about it. For me, my scoliosis was found after I had an injury in gym class in 8th grade in 1978. And they were doing x-rays and because they thought my ribs were broken. And then they discovered that I had a curve, actually had a still have a double S curve, which is the top portion curves one way and the lower portion curves another way, almost like an S. So they immediately told my parents that I definitely had scoliosis. And we refer to it and throughout many of the support groups and people that know way more than I do, it is referred to as idiopathic scoliosis because it means unknown, not really sure where it came from. Sometimes it's genetic, but it can just happen. Thankfully now, nurses and doctors are doing tests, the bend over test, the tests that you see to kind of determine things. But so for me, I immediately got referred to one of the top doctors in the country. It was very new at that point, in Rochester, New York, and went up and they did all kinds of x-rays and measurements and everything and said that I would definitely need to be in a back brace, through my growing years. So my growing years and major growing years for me, was during my high school years.
And also major social life. They talk about an 8th grader, talking about a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was,
one day
your life is normal. First normal is however we want to define that. And within 3-4 months, your world just turned upside down, and
Right.
you're starting high school, which is hard enough. And I'm short. I had glasses, the whole 9 yards. And so starting high school with a back brace, yeah, it was very daunting and there really were no words for it. And I went through my high school years, all 4 years with the back brace, because at that time, the doctors and orthotists were told us that you had to wear the brace 23 out of 24 hours a day in order for it to do what it needed to do. So, yeah.
Wow, wow, 4 years. I'm just picturing, as you said, like just the concept of going to high school for a teenager is so difficult
Mhm.
for all the boys and girls
Yes.
out there. But at the same time, that now you're adding, and you're talking about glasses, which I think used to be something that we always like to look at it being that four-eyed beast in a certain way.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
on
Now,
top
now
of
it's
that,
great. Now everybody wants them.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Now they're
Yeah.
like, now it's stylish. And then on top of that, you're talking about, having this silver horn part of you that's
Mhm.
just adding to more eyes on you, and the time in
Yeah.
your life where you want no eyes on you in a certain way, even though today might be different, but that's
Exactly.
through a screen, so maybe a little bit different. But the concept of just
Right on.
being in public and wanting that, can you just talk about, I think I prepared a question regarding the concept of like adversity, but I want to make it even more specific here when you talk about for a high school girl. So maybe something geared specifically, let's say, to parents, and maybe something you would want to say to girls when you're dealing with a specific adversity that has to do with a physical ailment, something that you're dealing with physically. I'm curious, what would you say? And what's your message, both to parents of how to deal with it with a child, and maybe also to
Right on.
a teenage girl or boy that might be dealing with something like that physically in school?
Yeah. Just kind of go back just a little bit, because
Sure.
nowadays scoliosis braces are so different than what it was in 1978, 79. I had what was called a Milwaukee brace. So it was something right under my chin, the back of my neck, all the way down past my hips, made of metal, thick plastic, did not bend. And so going through all that, not being able to sit in chairs correctly. And at that time, you had a lot of desks where the chair was still connected to the desk.
Right,
So,
right.
that made it difficult, made it because you
Oh my
couldn't really
gosh.
look down to take your tests. And yeah, so it was a number of things. What I have found over the years, didn't know it in the moment, is that knowledge is power. And if you can, or even have somebody that will support you in this, um, talk to your teachers. Ask them if you can explain what you're going through, if you feel comfortable enough, to your classmates. Because by educating them, it kind of takes away
Right,
that bully power.
right,
If more people know and more people understand it, not everyone is going to,
right,
and it is very difficult to put yourself out there, especially in high school, middle school, whatever age. But I have found that the more you educate people on something, at least you're going to find someone who is going to, no pun intended, but have your back.
ah,
um,
yeah, that's a very
and
good point.
and help you through this, because there's going to be at least one person that will kind of get it and realize that, you know and also realize too, I think it's also, the more you are willing to educate and talk about what you're going through, you
Right,
would be surprised at how many of your classmates may come to you, in private, in public, and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going through not the same as you, but this is what I have." Whether I'm dealing with anxiety, I'm dealing with depression, I'm dealing with a disease, an eating disorder, all those things. Like, for
sure,
me, people could see my brace, but there's so many things going on with all of us that no one sees.
right.
And yeah, I just do believe communication is key. I'm a journalism major, and the written word means a lot to me. And I think, especially where we're going, I mean, social media is wonderful. It has connected us, it has connected
You and
things in
I,
good ways. Yes,
right?
exactly. It also is used in very wrong ways, unfortunately.
Right.
But I think the thing that is missing is especially for kids growing up right now, is having that communication, having those actual conversations face to face. And, COVID didn't help any of that either.
But I think there's so many things that you're saying that are important that I would love to emphasize each one of them. And to be honest, with the first thing that came up when you were saying is for the person to be able to go up there and talk about what it is that they're going through. I think of there's it's an older movie at this point. 8 Mile, where the last scene where they're having a music battle, and he takes all of his weaknesses and he puts it into his own lyrics, and now the other person has
Mhm.
nothing to say back, and it sort of
Yeah,
makes it that when you put yourself out there, then there's nothing else for anyone to say anymore. They can't call
yeah,
you hey stiff necked, or they can't say
yeah,
those things
exactly.
because you already said it. And I think when you lay
Hmm.
your cards out, which is what you're saying, that can be really helpful. Now, at the same time,
Yeah,
for a teenage girl to get up in front of a class and say something like that could be really, really hard. And I think that's where a healthy relationship between the guardians and the parents that they
hmm,
have with their child to be able to be their support, and maybe in certain situations, maybe even going to the school with them as the child gets up there in
yes,
front of the class and talks about it. That could be really helpful because you're taking away all of that stigma and you're putting it out and sort of laying it out
yeah,
there. Now, that being
yeah,
said, there's another, and I get my own theory when I talk about the concept of what bullying and making fun is, and
hmm,
it's unfortunately it's a form of the word that you said before, communication. And a lot of
yeah,
times when people do things that are negative, it's coming from a place of not knowing how to communicate. When you have
hmm,
little children, they will scream and cry and whine, and when we teach them words, we teach them how to communicate, they get out of that stage that can be really annoying for us parents. And at
yeah,
the same time, when you
yeah,
have a child that is able to say the things that are going wrong with them, and there's someone else in the classroom that might have a parent at home that is going through something, that is not able to get out of a chair easily on their own, and the way they deal with it is by
hmm,
making fun of you because they don't know how to deal with other people. But now
exactly.
you put words to
Exactly.
it. Now you said, "This is what I'm going through and I'm struggling, and if I drop my pen,
Yeah,
please pick it up without making a comment because I can't get it." So
exactly.
you putting yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable. All of a sudden, like you said, it opens the doors. So now the house has an open door policy, and it's
Hmm.
the other person's job to go in and say, "Hey, let me go into that house because this person is being receptive and open, and they're opening up a conversation." And it's amazing how many of the conversations in this room come back to communication and being
Exactly.
able to
Absolutely.
talk about this. And just to take it a step further, and we talk about this communication, and I'm curious if you could talk about this for a minute. In the home itself, there's a whole different plethora of issues and things that can come up in the home as opposed to
Yeah.
a school situation. I'm curious, looking back at it now, what are the same things that either you say was really helpful for how it was dealt with in your home growing up, or maybe what are some of the things you would say parents should be doing or maybe not doing when it comes to dealing
Yeah.
with things at home?
I would say because of the time, because of the generation of my parents, they, and this is nothing against them because I see it within this generation
Mhm.
a lot, is that if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Um, and I know they didn't know enough. They just saw, oh, my daughter has an issue, a physical issue, that if we don't take care of it, it could lead to a really difficult life for her. Because if you don't take care of certain degrees of scoliosis, you have trouble with breathing. As women, we can have trouble in childbirth. I mean, there's a whole plethora of things that could go wrong. Um, but yeah, they didn't get it. So I was very alone. Um, and not like today. Today, there's fantastic support groups. And through social media, through things like this, kids can connect. Like the groups like Bracing for Scoliosis and Higgy Bears are wonderful tools and support groups. And kids are meeting like on a weekly basis through Zoom calls and different things. And, if you don't have somebody in your area that is going through something like this, you can connect and you can have that support system and you can tell people about your bad day. Um, if I tried to explain to them, and like you said, in high school is social. High school is it
Identity,
can
self
make or break
identity.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it not for them not really understanding and just I think they looked at it almost like braces on your teeth. Someone had explained that to me at one point, because you need to correct, something that's crooked. But this was something that, you can close your mouth to braces. Nothing against people with braces. Both daughters had them. They are painful. um, but this wasn't something that you could hide, no matter how much I tried. Um, so it was always standing out, and you know wanting to go on an occasional date and having the argument of, please, like, for 3 hours, can I just not wear it? And even too, and I talk about this in my book in a very creative way, but one of the things that I found was I needed something else to focus on, because I was focusing so much on this, and it was kind of taking over my brain, my health. So I started playing tennis, and I was able to use that 1 hour out of the brace to play tennis, and then kind of convinced my parents, listen, it's hard to do this even with a brace on if I want to do it more. So can I please at least play tennis in it? And then tried out for my tennis team and made it, thankfully. But it gave me something else to focus on. But yeah, going nowadays, I would tell parents, just listen. Like, there's something that I do with my daughters now, and I just learned this recently, is when they need to talk or they're going through something, I say, do you want advice or do you want me to listen?
Oh,
and then it's up to them. My daughters are 28 and 24, so I've learned the hard way.
So that's a great point. At what age though can parents start asking that question?
Me personally, I think you should ask that at any age. I really do, because it allows the child to feel like they have some control. And, maybe if it's something that is harmful to them, of course, a parent 100% needs to step in and give some advice. Like, there are boundaries with it. But parents going forward, if your child has scoliosis or your child's going through, if your child's in a wheelchair, if your child's dealing with anxiety, listening is huge. And if as parents, we are not equipped. No matter how many books you read, we're not 100% equipped for whatever life throws us. So it's finding those people that are like you, that are the professionals. Find those people for your kids to talk to. It's so important, especially at a young age, because and this was a reason why I wrote my book, was because I wanted to get to kids in a younger age as opposed to where I was being older. I wanted, like elementary school all the way up through high school. If I could write a book that was done in kind of a creative way, but also be able to give them tools in the back to help support their mental health. The message, and support their mental health, and have those conversations and find the safe spaces and start doing those at a younger age, because if I had that, I would have been so much better off as I got older, because it affected me. It still does. It affects me my entire life.
At the same time, I'm also hearing the way you're talking. There obviously has been a certain point in life where you've been able to recognize both anxiety and other things that you've been through, and at the same time, I'm sure that's come through in some way regarding your parenting. And I'm curious, how do you go about talking about this specific point of your own anxiety, your own adversity that you've gone through, and incorporating that into your experiences with it, with your children, not regarding how you parent necessarily, but more regarding the discussion aspect of how your kids perceive mom?
Yeah. That took a lot of learning and a lot of therapy, to be honest, and a lot of just kind of getting in tune with me. And I have to say, those COVID years were very changing years for me, because of the isolation, because of like trying to find peace, and trying to feel safe in a world that didn't seem very safe. And then, of course, anything that you dealt with in life that hasn't been healed, there's certain things that become triggers. So I immersed myself in meditation. just to be able to kind of clear my brain, and worked with somebody that is very well versed in that. Um, and so just going through that, I learned a lot of, and I still make this mistake, but learning to kind of take a step back and learning to take a deep breath. And I've always been a person that you give me a situation, or if I'm dealing with someone, I'm going to look at it all aspects of their aspect, my aspect, the whole thing before I hopefully jump in. So I hope my girls see a mom that um, has boundaries now instead of being the people pleaser all the time.
Wow.
Because it's still that thing of you want acceptance because you didn't get it at a younger age.
Wow.
Um, and of hopefully, like I said, there were mistakes made, definitely. But hopefully they see it now and my girls have always been able to come to me and come to my husband. And we've always said this open door. We may not like what comes out of your mouth, what you're going to tell us, but, you know, give us a moment. We may not react the right way initially, but give us a moment and we're going to try and figure this out together.
I love that.
So
And I
I
think
hope,
that collaborative approach, both regarding you and your husband together, but also regarding the kids realizing that, hey, mom and dad are fallible too, and we make mistakes. And I think that's
absolutely.
in my what I would say if I made a list, and I don't like making lists in the sense of like my top 10 parenting things, because I think it's
Yeah.
so subjective for what is the right parenting concept and stuff. It's not like rules for life,
Hmm.
which is maybe a
Yeah.
little bit different. If I
Yeah.
had to put something, I would say at the top of my list is for kids to see parents being fallible and being human beings, and they make mistakes. And when we can own
Absolutely.
up to it and take responsibility for that, the way you're just talking, it's obvious the personal work that you've done just based on being able to say, yeah, it took being to a certain place, having to get help,
Hmm.
seeking the help, working with that help to get to a place where, all right, okay, this is who I am. This is the things I need to deal with. This is how I have to embrace myself, share it, and write a book about it. That is
Yeah.
something that I think your kids have also seen, and they were in their 20s when COVID happened, and watching you through it. But there
Hmm.
was a certain lens that they had to see mom be able to make this emotional journey the way you have regarding the things that you had to deal with. And I'm sure that's been something
Yes.
that you've been able to go ahead and talk about. So, again, the two things is working on yourself and realizing that,
Hmm.
there are things that I can still do. And the second part to that, which is just as important, is that fallibility. And I think that's so important when it comes to parenting. And I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a silver lining, but at least from our conversation, just to hear from you regarding you having to be in a certain place physically and therefore obviously also emotionally and mentally, and that
Hmm.
had an effect regarding you being able to deal with adversity, and then how that channeled through into who you are as a parent, and the message that you're giving over
Yeah.
now. I'm curious, when you talk to parents, or maybe if you're talking to a group of older teenage girls and you talk about this concept,
Hmm.
what would you say regarding taking whatever issues a person is dealing with in that current situation and now using that to their benefit to be able to grow, and for their tree to be the healthiest tree that they're trying to grow?
I would say that it's not always fun going through whatever you're going through, but being on this side of it now, um, it gets better. It gets better, and you may not see it at the time, and it anything that you're going through. I mean, they always say, "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger." I
Great
don't
song
know.
too, by the way. Yeah.
I don't totally 100% agree with that, but it hopefully whatever you're going through, I feel is almost like a gift. At least for me, it was a gift because it allowed me, I didn't know it at the time, but it allowed me as I got older to look at things differently, to want to help others, to want to have the kid. And I've always done this. I don't know where it comes from, and it probably comes from my experience is that if I'm in a group, and I see kids, and there's that one kid that is standing silently in the corner, I am
Right.
noticing that kid first. I'm noticing that child first.
And that's probably has to do with your own experiences as well. And there's a
Absolutely.
certain
Absolutely.
sensitivity, and and your radar is sort of honed in on that person in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, there are kids out there. I was too. I was a shy kid. I still, be totally honest, I am not one that wants to be in front of the camera. And that's probably why the field that I went in, I was behind the camera producing. So, yeah, so there's still that anxiety. But yeah, if if you can just give kids and teenage girls especially, and teenage boys, honestly, because we have to be okay with sharing our emotions, and we have to not feel like by doing that, then that opens the floodgates for everyone else to have an opinion about it. Like when we put things out on social media, which I see my girls do, I see other teenagers do, and I think it's wonderful that they can do that. But there also has to be this thing of, just because I am okay and confident enough, or even not confident enough, to put myself out there, or to put myself out there when I'm in tears, to show maybe another person it's okay, um, that doesn't allow everyone else to open the door and say, I can say whatever I want because you're putting yourself out there.
Right.
I think just
The
comments I
filter
see.
works both ways. It works for the person
Yeah,
saying something, and it has to work for the person receiving it. And that's why at least from the way I see it, both personally and professionally, is that sometimes having the comment section turned off is a good thing, because it helps
exactly.
sort of create some sort of boundary. And I think that's what you're
Yeah,
saying, of being able to know how things are going to work. At the same time, I do believe that when a person puts something out there, so to speak, they have to expect that it's going to be seen or heard by others, and
mhm,
therefore people are going to comment back. So there is
yeah,
a
absolutely.
responsibility that comes with it. And on
Yeah,
this topic of responsibility, I know we've sort of been touching on it, and I think from your experiences regarding what your parents, I guess, didn't do more than they did in
mhm,
a certain way. I'm curious, what you would you say to parents that are dealing with a child that is going through certain things, that is their own adversity that they have to deal with as a parent, but yet also for their child, and being able to acknowledge that within their child for what their child is going through. How would you recommend, or what would you say to parents that are dealing with a child that is going through something, but yet at the same
mhm,
time they're also going through something, and having that understanding that there are things happening in both our lives, and we have to figure out how to deal with it? What would you say?
absolutely. I would honestly say, and the thing that has been the biggest help for myself and my family, because we all are in this, and we do it separately, we do it together, is find a really good therapist. Find a really good therapist, and that, the stigma of that, I really hope has gone away. I know growing up, it was one of those things where, oh, you have issues, you have problems. We all have
Right.
issues. We all have problems. Um, it's so needed. Like, let's make it more normal. And let's have someone else help guide us through some of this.
But
And I am going through some of this right now myself personally, is learning to heal my inner child
uh,
and parenting my inner child in order to be able to be a better person and to be able to be a better parent for my daughters.
yeah.
I think it has been a huge game changer.
Yes, and for
Definitely.
those of you that are not understanding this concept of inner child, I think it's about 3, 4 episodes ago we actually had someone that we talked
Mm,
specifically about inner child, and I'm so glad that
yeah.
you brought that up, and embracing that inner child. And I think there are so many areas. Well, let's say for someone that is looking to, I guess, know more about their inner child and exploring, where would you recommend they look?
Oh wow. Just if locally, for wherever you are, going looking up different therapists, looking at reviews. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one other thing about social media. There's reviews out there. And not I have also learned, because I've been through some things, but I also learned that not every therapist is the right match for every person.
Oh wow, beautiful. Well said.
So be willing to, don't be looking at that therapist to be like, oh, they're going to give me
Mhm.
all the answers. I'm going to be healed. I'm going to be wonderful. I mean, I've gone through some therapists that took me back to the worst places and was like, okay, have a nice day, which was not good. And I'm so thankful for who I have now in my life because she
Yeah,
just has been life changing.
amazing.
Um, yeah.
And it's so well said. And we talked about here on the podcast. I talk about this and where I'm located where you could find me is
Mhm.
finding a therapist that's right for you is like finding a house, a spouse, or a pair of shoes. And sometimes you have to
Yes,
try on a few to find the one that works for you, and that's okay. There's nothing
absolutely.
wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Someone could be well known on social media or very well known in the community that you live. That doesn't mean that they're right for you. And take
Yeah.
whatever recommendations you get, try them out. I recommend somewhere between 2 and 4 sessions. I would say for the
Hmm.
first one or two, you have to have a reason to say no to not go back. If you don't have a reason to say no, then go back and keep and see
Yeah.
how this can work with you. It's like again, just giving that example. Sometimes there's like a sweatshirt you're about to try on, and you feel as you're getting your hands in there, like, no, this is not going to work for me
Hmm.
for my body type. So we don't put it on anymore. And there's sometimes you have to put it
Yeah.
on and like, no, it's not working for me. And sometimes you have to like wear it for a little bit, and then you're like, let me return this, and that's okay
Absolutely.
as well. And there, I think therapy works the
Hmm.
same way. And I'm so glad you said that. It's not just coming from me. So it's
Yeah.
not something that's that I put out there as a therapist talking about therapy. You have to find the person that's right for you. And I maybe
Absolutely.
there is a therapist out there that that deals specifically with mental health that has to do with someone dealing with or a family member of scoliosis. I'm not sure if there is
Hmm.
such a thing, but at the same time,
Yeah.
maybe there's someone out there that you can say deals with adversity or deals with trauma or casualties within a family or physical illness. There are so many
Hmm.
different ways to search, and you can ask those questions. And I implore everyone
Yeah.
that's listening to this or watching this that ask questions that are important to you. So if you need someone that has dealt with scoliosis, whether it's their own personal life and their family, or within their office that's dealt with physical ailments, ask that and make sure that they have
Yeah.
so that they can deal with you and work
Yeah.
with you and ask your
Absolutely.
questions. There's no such thing as a bad question except for the one not asked. That's something that we
Exactly.
that we
Exactly.
talk
And
about.
that's something I encourage. I always encourage my daughters to do that. And I've always done that. And, I'm like, it'd be better to ask a couple more questions than just to sit in silence
Mhm.
and never have the answer. And yeah, so, and like you said, are there, specific therapists out there for scoliosis? There are,
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
and bracing for scoliosis, and
right.
that's with the US at the end. They actually recently, well, June is Scoliosis Awareness Month, but
I did not
they
know that.
work with mental health. Yeah, they work with mental health providers and are doing things on their social media where you can sign up and talk with
Yeah,
these therapists and work with these mental health providers. So it is wonderful. I mean, that is the other
yeah,
advantage of having the technology that we have now. Because with my therapist, yes, initially I met with her in person, but now we can do it through FaceTime or Zoom
amazing.
or whatever is
Great.
accessible to
Yeah.
us.
It's not the same, but it works,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's something that if a person needs, they should 100% do it. And I think, if I could say, without in my little humble opinion, that's been one of the silver linings that came out of the past 4 or 5 years of
Hmm.
what we've been
Yes.
dealing with shutdowns and COVID.
Yeah.
Is that online can work. So I do think, as much as over the past decade or maybe even two, the concept of therapy, the stigma is getting less and less and less. And I
Hmm.
think it took an added jump over the past 5 years. But then on top of that, it also has to do with the positivity and the things that are available online and how we can have therapy online, especially for a
Yeah.
generation that's growing up with computers and social media and constant video conferencing. For them to be able to have feeling and emotion and be in a room and be concentrating on something, there are so many opportunities for that to happen. And
Yeah.
and I encourage all parents to find the person that can work for your child.
Work.
As we sort of wrap this down, there are so many great things that I picked up and I've learned from, again, I thank you so much for giving us a few minutes just to sort of
Oh, absolutely.
work on and being able to share on this topic specifically. So the way I like thinking about it is, I guess, having a healthy balance, and specifically regarding the the struggles that a person can deal with, but yet also trying to create stability in their life. And here you are talking years removed from going through something that is life changing, and let's say scoliosis, and
Yeah.
having a physical ailment that didn't allow you, both obviously emotionally and mentally, but also physically, to do certain things.
Yes.
So I'm curious how you were able to navigate through your own health issues to create that stability in life. And I know you talked about the tennis a little bit, but if you
Yeah.
go a little more, a little deeper than that, and how do you then instill those type of attributes and traits, the balancing this in your children?
Yeah. For what I was going through at the time I was going through it, it was, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was in what they call survival mode. Um, and
Right.
just, trying to get through the day. And just hoping, just couldn't wait to get out of high school. Couldn't run fast enough, obviously, because I wanted to shut the door on that. And finally, when they said you don't have to have the brace on anymore, um, that was, freedom for me. But the other side of it was, I know, people can say, well, then you were done. Like you didn't have any more issues and you could lead a normal life. But what I didn't realize was all that stuff that was building in that survival mode. They were layers. Yeah. Like that lives in your body and it's going to come out some way. And it also, I look back and see different decisions in my life, different things that I did in my life, different relationships I had with people, all kind of stemmed from that, from feeling less than, feeling not, not having that self-esteem, not having that confidence. And yeah, so for me, it wasn't until years later that I started kind of unraveling the big giant yarn ball that, became, and I talk about this in one of my posts about, we, as children or even as adults, we put on almost like armor guard or like a sweater to give us safety. And so you get to a point in your life, and sometimes it will come at you when you least expect it. And those triggers will just hit big time. And it's kind of like, okay, do I continue to live with this and live with this anxiety and how it's affecting everything? Or do I say, this is the day, this is where it stops. And this is where I get to take control of it. And so that, I think if you can do that at an earlier age, now granted, as a kid, that's still hard. There's so many other factors coming at you. But if you can learn and talk with people that are the right people to talk to and have those support groups of other kids going through the same thing, it makes you feel less alone. You can have those conversations in a safe space. You can have the right mental health tools that help you, and help you like build in other areas of your life. For me, it was tennis. For someone else, it could be another hobby. It could be, just
Right.
through exercise, just anything else that makes you feel good about you. I think those are invaluable. And if you can learn those at a younger age, man, those will take you through life in so many instances. So that's where I am at now. I wish I could go back and tell Lisa, who was, 16, 17, like, it's going to be okay. And here are the tools you need. Yeah.
Well, that's a great message, and I really appreciate that. And I guess just because you brought up the concept of inner child and seeing what you've been able to build up, and obviously doing work specifically with the inner child and where you are today with it, I'm curious if it was a conversation or something that you would be able to say to your inner teenager. What would you say right now to them?
Um, you're going to be okay. It is not going to be an easy road, but I got you. I got you through all of this. And you're going to do some things that will help other kids. So what you're going through right now, you don't see it, but it is going to make a difference. Even if, and the reason why I wrote the book is like, even if I could make a difference in one child's life to feel less alone, to
Right.
not have to suffer in silence, then then I've done what I need to do. um,
And how does your inner child take that?
um, they smile. She
Yeah.
smiles. She
Yeah.
feels like it's a giant big hug that she should have had a very long time ago.
Uh, So I just for people listening to this, I think that's a lot of like a self validation, which is something that can take a long time to
Yeah.
get to, and no one should feel like, well, if I don't have it right now, then I'm never going
Mm-hmm.
to get it. It can be
Yes.
gotten, and I think Lisa being able to have this conversation with us and being very open and vulnerable shows also the
Mm-hmm.
work that's been done, and you can get that work done. And Lisa, I really appreciate you sharing that. I mean, being allowing us to sort of be part of that experience. So I
No,
thank you
thank you.
so
Thank
much for
you.
that and for having this amazing conversation that I think is really apropos in so many ways and for so many
Mm-hmm.
people. I'm curious as we sort of close up over here. I've been trying to be mindful of the time, and also realizing that there's probably so many things that we didn't talk about that we
Yeah.
probably can. Are there one or two things that maybe we didn't talk about that maybe you would want to talk about your message? And obviously, the book itself and how that's something that could be of a benefit to
Yeah.
people.
The book itself, I wrote it during COVID. And writing for me, I know journaling is a really big tool, a mental health tool. Writing for me has always been very therapeutic. I have to say, when I wrote the book, it was almost 3.5 years ago now, almost four. When I wrote the book, that was therapy for me also. And I used to have this nightmare all the time, of I would be in my back brace. I would be like older at a business meeting, standing up in front of people, trying to get my point across. And I have this back brace on and I can't get it off. And it was a constant nightmare. And from having written the book to the day that it was published, I don't have that nightmare anymore. It was just,
And
yeah.
wow.
Um, so I hope, and I know we, hone in a lot on scoliosis, and that is really the main reason why, how I wrote the book. And that's what the Silverhorn represents for me. But the book is for any, like I said before, anyone, any child. I've had adults that say, oh my gosh, that was me, and thankful for what I've given them, just, shining a light on somebody. So I hope it provides some, I always say, peace within the pages, that someone can feel less alone, that someone can, look at the mental health toolkit in the back, pick and choose what works for them, um, start having conversations. I want it to be not only for children, but for parents, for teachers. We need to have these conversations. We need to, part of being in school is also, like you said, the social and just honestly, the mental health aspect of it, especially kids that have gone through COVID and were so isolated and then just thrown back into what we say is a normal situation. And we've never, not never, but we rarely really touch on any of that. Like that was, as adults, that was an upside down world for us. How do we expect our kids to be okay with that? So it took almost 2 years to publish the book, but it came out, I feel, at the right time. And I hope others that read it, it's coming at the right time. So yeah, I just hope that somebody finds value in it and their child finds value in it.
That's beautiful. I thank you so much for that, and I think the message of that we're trying to give off here in the podcast, and something that I think you just mentioned is you are never
Yeah,
alone, and there are other places and things, and you talked about at the beginning, and I just want to re-encourage, and if you have any links you want to send us or to put in the show notes, we'd gladly take
absolutely.
it regarding finding that support for people. I think it's one of the most important things, that community aspect, which if we ever have a chance to speak again, I'd like to talk more about of how to find and how to hone in on that specifically. And in nowadays and age, I think it's a lot easier than it was back in the
Yeah,
'70s. So
absolutely.
being able to find that for yourself, I highly encourage people to do that. But are there places where people can find you, and how can they hear or contact or be in touch with you more?
Absolutely. The best place to find me, I would say go on my Instagram, and that is the Silverhorn Girl. They can also email me at the silverhorngirl@gmail.com. I'm always constantly checking things. The book you can find on Amazon. The book honestly is available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, but also any
Amazing.
independent bookstore if you go to indiebound.org through them. But also, too, you can send me a quick email. I would love to send you a copy. I'll sign it, put a little note in there for you. One of the ways that I sign my books is "You are a gift to this world." And I truly believe
Yes.
that, because we all are. We all have a purpose. We all are special gifts. And it gets muddied and it gets hard to see that. But we all have value. And
Yeah. And we are not alone.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. As we sort of, finish up over here, Lisa, I like asking a few questions here, just so we can sort of get to know you and how you think a little bit better. So,
Okay.
my first question to you is: with your two daughters, as they were growing up, let's say you and your husband had date night, and there was a historical figure babysitter out there, who would that be that you'd be comfortable to watch your kids?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Has to be historical or, hmm. I would probably say Julie Andrews. I know that's not like
Oh, that's a good
history.
one.
She's still here.
Yeah, that's close enough.
But
Yeah, that
yeah,
is true. She is, and
just
she's a good one. That's
yeah,
very graceful. Yeah, that's
just a real,
awesome.
real
I love
person.
that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. I'm curious if there is any place or any maybe podcast or book or YouTube video that has been helpful to you on your journey that you would like to share with others.
Yes. Actually, and this was part of my meditation journey. I linked up with Jay Shetty during COVID, and I was also part of his on his team when he would do live meditations and different episodes for a brief period. And I would say his book, and not like I'm promoting a book, but his book, Think Like a Monk, really changed the way I look at things and really took a deeper dive into this world and what's really important. So yeah,
Amazing. I love
that
that.
was actually
Yeah,
like,
that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, because it's one of my in my watch list of books to buy.
okay,
So
yeah,
I
that's
appreciate
awesome.
that, because I think it's something that I hope to get to next. I heard this. I heard a quote. I got a chance to be an idol of mine recently, and I was telling him about my book next to my bed, and he
Please.
said that pile's never going to get
No,
smaller.
I know mine
So,
doesn't either.
he said,
Keeps getting taller.
don't stop buying the books.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
yeah,
I know my wife would love for it to get
yeah.
smaller, but hopefully one day. So, my last question to you, Lisa, as we sort of
Sure.
finish up over here: if you can think of one everyday mundane superpower you like to have as a mom, what would that be?
To take away my daughter's or any child's pain.
Wow,
That'd be my
that's
super.
amazing. Wow, love that, love that, Lisa. This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you
No,
so
thank
so
you
much
so
for
much. I
everything.
appreciate the opportunity and really, really appreciate being on here.